diverting attention away from cancer when in fact cancer charities are causing cancer. This is another moral thing. In fact, plastic isn't recycled at all. It's called downcycling. This means that it's made into a different plastic product that cannot be recycled after one recycling. Downcycle. Once we have finished making a new quote-unquote product, it becomes garbage. Ultimately, there is no recycling. All this plastic ends up in our environment forever. Those silly environmentalists. They have no idea that when they spend countless hours taking their recycling and spending hours, putting papers here and plastics here and separating the number 7 plastic from the number 3 plastic, all this goes to China on giant empty barges into factories, employing 10-year-old children making $1 a day. Are we sustaining recycling in our environment, or are we simply sustaining the production of plastic and the plastic industry? 300 million tons of plastic per year are traveling across the ocean. And so it would seem, my eco-fascist fools, that those countless hours you spend sorting your recycling do not actually benefit anything. In fact, it creates more waste. So putting plastic into the blue box is sadly not a long-term solution. It only kicks the can down the road, and it diverts waste away from here to factories in China. And then they make them into toys at factories and sell them at Walmart for 89 cents. And then you buy the toys and they go into Christmas stockings, and then they get thrown out and they end up in landfills. Just the other day I heard someone asking their friend, when is our city going to be able to start recycling paper coffee cups? And I had to stop myself from groaning, because what the person was saying was essentially this: that I want to feel no guilt in using 2 or more of these cups every day for the rest of my life, rather than buy a reusable mug. Yes, my children, recycling is a fraud. There is no recycling. It all ends up in the dump one way or another. We're just kicking the can down the road. They just don't care.
Electronics recycling is rarely done the way you or I would expect. Discarded computers are often shipped to developing countries where they mine them for raw materials. There are hundreds of scrapyards just like this one, all over the world. I shot the footage you just saw, and I've seen firsthand the devastation caused by our throwaway culture. The lifespan of electronics is getting shorter and shorter, causing incredible growth in e-waste shipments to the developing world. Electronic waste is actually toxic. Computer boards have arsenic, mercury, lead, and environmentally devastating polybrominated flame retardants. The people I met who burned these computers to extract the copper don't know they are breathing in these toxic chemicals.
So all that feel-good recycling that you eco-Nazis are into, all that plastic is melted down by children in factories making $1.50 a day. All day, They breathe in your plastic, the plastic additives, the flame retardants, the toxic. One report says that he saw there's no protective masks, there's no wearing of masks or protective equipment, labor practices that would make you squeamish. This is where all your feel-good recycling goes. It's shredded into Walmart toys by children in factories, and they will most likely die of cancer from inhaling the chemicals from the chemical exposure. But they won't have money for the treatment because they're only making $1.50 a day. So, even worse than the occupational exposure from the children and the feel-good recycling goodness in your plastics. Maybe be the effect of plastics on recycling in the environment. If stuff has a little bit of contamination, workers just dump it in the countryside, says one expert, Dr. Puckett. We saw plastic bags, he says, floating around in the fields, thousands of them. This is where your recycling goes. And what's the energy footprint on shipping all those plastic containers to the other side of the world and then all the way back? That doesn't sound like it's very environmentally friendly. But again, that's not the point. In California, cities and counties have an incentive to recycle. In other words, divert as much material as possible. A 1989 law requires that municipalities reduce the trash they send to landfills by 50% or face hefty fines. Diversion then becomes the magic politically correct word. Yes, my children, let's divert our waste to China. And then all the statistics come out by cities around North America about how amazing it is and how much money we've saved and how much waste we've reduced, when they don't say where it's actually going. All we've done is divert it to another sector of the world where conditions are much, much worse, and laws do not protect little children inhaling poisonous fumes, making $1.50 an hour to recycle your precious, precious pop cans and plastics. In fact, your precious tax dollars set up Waste Diversion Ontario. This is a private corporation that was set up after the Waste Diversion Act passed in 2002 by the Ontario Parliament, and it requires, quote, all companies that introduce packaging and printed paper into the province to fund 50% of Ontario's Blue Box Municipal Waste Diversion Program. So this is actually legislated by our government that we have to keep consuming, and if we don't worry about reducing. No. Don't worry about reusing. Worry about diverting attention away from the fact that your blue box recycling goes to China. So who controls the recycling program? Who runs the Waste Diversion Company of Ontario? Let's look a little more closely at this. Not only are they protected from legal liability, but they are a non-crown corporation, which means they are not accountable to you, the public, then it would seem, my children, that the very people responsible for your recycling programs are the companies creating all the waste. There is no recycling. There is only consumption, and all that waste ultimately finds its way, after one downcycling, into a diverted garbage dump near you. This is the magical truth, my children. Cancer, charities cause cancer. Recycling programs are caused by companies who care not about recycling. It's a giant public relations program guaranteed to make sure that you don't feel guilty about continuing to consume their plastic products. Because if everyone was reusing instead of recycling, there would be no consumption and they would lose all their money and control. Okay, so that's it for this edition of the Animal Politics Show. My name's Fat Cat. See you next week.